Welcome, Suchit.
Thank you.
I want to do a quick introduction of Suchit, the guest for today for the Flow Wise Leadership Podcast. Suchit is a good friend, and I have the privilege of being a friend with him for a number of years. But I know I'm a friend outside the business context of Suchit. But I have the privilege of talking to you today.
Are you gonna tell them how we're friends?
Yeah. We will. So we've been friends outside of the business context. We played in the same club cricket team locally. We still compete against each other in cricket. But Suchit is the CEO of Unilog. He is building the best B2B e-commerce company. Suchit is deeply engaged in his community and has been recognized for his business leadership. Recently, he received the 2024 Philadelphia Alliance for Capital and Technologies, which is called PACT. He was the Technology CEO of the Year. Congrats, Suchit. 2017 BizTouch Impact CEO Award, 2015 Philadelphia Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree. Suchit is a current trustee of the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. It's the home of the Benjamin Franklin National Memorial. In addition, Suchit ardently supports youth, entrepreneurship, sports, and many other things. He's also the chair and mentor of Thai Philadelphia, focused on program for high schoolers to learn entrepreneurship, invention, and innovation. Above all that, I know him as a great friend and a terrific human being, always willing to lean in and help anybody. And he's also a style icon in the book. So welcome to
Thank you.
Global Leadership Podcast.
Thank you very much. So happy to be here. Subbu and I met at the cricket field, and we've been friends off the business side of things, and it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Suchit. We'll jump right into it. Right. So you became a CEO at a very young age. Walk us through the journey. What were the biggest challenges you faced in the transition to a leadership role, and how did you overcome them?
You're called upon to lead in whether in your personal life with your family, whether in business or even in a team. You could get leadership positions to manage a team. When called upon to lead, it is natural to think, A, am I ready? And B, can I do it? And I had the same questions. I had the same concerns. I had the same doubt. But the best part about, living a full life is to be curious and to say, oh, let's find out. Not be afraid of failure. I was given an opportunity to lead the company. My father started the company. I started with him very early on, and we both built the company for many years. And when given the opportunity, obviously you have questions because you don't know what you don't know. I guess the challenge is to sort of get over that and be curious and excited about what might be, and to say, yeah, let's bring it on. Let's find out.
Yeah, excellent. So to double click on that a little, right? So in that curiosity journey, let's find out walk us through a couple of examples of the mindset shift, right? A pivotal moment where you were observing and just like, okay, this is a mindset shift that you have to make yourself either naturally or, in a different way, motivating in that shift.
Yeah, I think when you're in leadership positions, you have to understand, and I sort of understood early on that everything, your team is a reflection of you, right? And the energy that you bring to a situation, the positivity that you bring to a challenge is how the team will adapt to those kind of situations. And so what you bring to the table, how you walk, how you talk, how you smile or not smile, and how stressed you are, literally translates to the team. And so part of the, early days was to sort of learn that when in that position, when people look to you for direction, that you have clarity of thought, that you have conviction, and that you're able to show a path through a challenging situation. And for sometimes, there might be a situation where you yourself may not know. And I'll touch upon this a little bit later. I don't believe anybody is self-made, right? We stand on the shoulders of people that work with us, and we get to claim the glory of it all. But at the same time, it comes with the responsibility of knowing that as a leader, you have to be the first one to accept a challenge, accept failure, and stand brave in the face of it.
That's really well said. In terms of the team, right? Whether you build it, mentor it, or you inherit it. So when you started, like when you were called upon, to this role in the beginning of it, right? Obviously, you probably went through lots of failures and lots of successes, obviously. Give like a example of one or two pretend failures or like challenges that you had early where you had to step up and as exactly you will articulated how you said it, show the way to others and also kind of protect the team in a way and take the team along with you towards, overcoming those failures.
So in the early days of Unilog, we always had the culture of trying things that hadn't been done before. And the way I think about failure and success is that the outcomes are sometimes not in our control, right? The same analogy applies to sport, right? I don't think anyone that watched the Super Bowl last week would say, well, the Chiefs didn't prepare as much or the Eagles did more work. Like, I think they all put their heart and soul on the field. And I'm of the opinion, do you want to put everything out on the field and still lose? Or do you want to put your bare minimum and just get lucky, right? So to me, failure and success are the outcomes. I love the process, right? I love, there have been so many times at the company where we lose deals, like very competitive deals, and we feel like we have it, and it's a weekly, monthly occurrence, right? You win more, you lose some, but as long as you're doing the work and following the process and are excited about it, that is the real, glory, and that's the stuff that should charge you up, the putting in that effort.
Excellent. Speaking of charging you up, we are recording this podcast on the day of Eagles Parade happening in downtown Philly, and it's incredible energy, right?
In the city.
In the city. Now, I was sharing with you before the recording started about my plane journey and everybody jumping in. So that energy, right? Talk about bringing the energy on the field, giving everything, even if it's a failure, accepting that failure, etc. Give kind of an insight on like the energy, right? How so, how do you leverage it, with
Yeah.
your leadership style?
I think when you're successful,
Yeah.
like the Eagles were, it's, energy comes easily because you're happy, you're ecstatic. If you win deals, you're being successful. If you have a great fundraising round, everything's going great. It's easy to be energetic. It's more difficult when the chips are down, right? And this is why I love Philadelphia, right? This city has been through so much and has such a long and storied history and tradition. And in the last 7 years, we've been to the Super Bowl, I think 3 times now, and we've lost once and we won a couple times. But the losses, hurt. We have to process it. And to me, to find energy in the face of loss and to be able to pick yourself back up, that is the true character of a team, of a company, of an organization, of individuals. And it comes with, again, that desire to do better next time, to continue to dig into the process. So I think energy is important, especially when chips are down and you feel like there isn't a way out. The only way out, I always say this, the best way to go through hell, keep going, So that's how you get the energy.
That's awesome. So Philadelphia, right? So you grew up in Bangalore.
Well, I grew up in Gujarat and Baroda. My family is from Bangalore. And before I came to the US, I spent almost 15 years in Bangalore.
Yeah. So what took you to Philly? And I can relate to you, given that I also is Philly is a home right now. What was transition like when you came to Philadelphia, especially in the business context and also personal context, right? So how did you integrate with the community, both on the business side and also on the personal side?
So I actually heard MR's podcast on Flowise the other day, and he has had an amazing immigrant journey. My journey was very different because of people like him and others that have paved the way for first generation sort of immigrants to come here and do well. So thanks to everyone that's sort of come before me and us, right? Actually, the first time I came to the US, I was 19 years old. I came on a youth exchange program. And and I'd never been on a plane before. I flew from Mumbai to Montgomery, Alabama. And it was an amazing trip. I was here for about 3 months and learned a lot, stayed with host families, some of whom I'm still very close to and friends with. Went back, started Unilog, and then I was going back and forth a fair bit. So culturally, I knew what it was to build a business here, to live here, to work here. But I always went back to India. And then I moved here permanently in 2013. And the real driver was Unilog was, we'd done an amazing job building a services company. But in 2013, we launched our B2B e-commerce platform. And it was a great time for the product and platform to make its debut. And we were very successful very quickly. And it required me to be here, to be closer to our customers, to build a customer support organization that was as close to the customers as possible. And that's what brought me here. And and I moved from Bangalore to 16th and Spruce. And, the company was already doing well. So unlike MR, it wasn't like I came here with $8 in my pocket. So it was a great move. The company has gone from strength to strength. And in 2020, we secured a very large investment from one of the largest private equity groups, Invest Corp, and they've been a great partner to us. So it's been a great journey. And I think just to extend a little bit on the immigrant side of things, which we're all part of the Indian American diaspora. Reagan said it best. Why I love being here and being American and building a business and company is, you can live in any country for as long as you want. You can live in China for 20 years. You can live in Japan for 50 years. You can even live in India for 50 years. You're never going to be Chinese, Indian, or Japanese. This is the only country where you can come, build a life, and be American.
I got chills hearing, to be honest with you.
I can't take credit for it. It was Reagan.
Yeah.
One of my favorite presidents.
That's awesome. So speaking of MR, for folks who haven't checked out the first episode, MR Rangaswami had a fantastic insight of unique journey of immigration.
Yeah.
And then you had your own unique journey, of integrating into the community. Speaking of 16th and Spruce, right, and some of the organizations you're involved in, PACT, and Thai Philadelphia, and you've done incredible job. You got the awards and stuff, but like that's been also well deserved in terms of you put in a lot of time serving, right? So I know personally, you pick up a phone call from anybody and really, see how you can help, etc. Where did that come from?
I was very fortunate, like I said, that I was very fortunate to have a lot of people help me, support me, guide me, mentor me throughout my life. And very early on, I decided the best way to say thank you is to pay it forward. And to me, I'll tell you a story. And when I started my career, I was a door-to-door salesman in Mumbai. And my dad introduced me to someone who was a professor at McGill, had moved back to Mumbai. His name was Professor Rishi Kumar Pandya. And he took me kind of under his wings and mentored me and taught me pretty much everything I know about public speaking, communication, sales, marketing, all of those things. And his only ask was, when you make it, make sure you pay it forward, that you help the next generation learn some of these skills and give your time, your talent, and your energy. It's always easy to write checks, but I think giving your talent, teaching, and I come from a family of teachers, so I love my grandfather taught engineering all his life. His brothers are teachers, founded universities and colleges in India. So maybe I'm predisposed to it. One of my favorite things to do is at Thai, we run the program TYE, the Young Entrepreneur. So we bring in high school students from city schools, from public schools, from private schools, and we go, take them through an entire entrepreneurship program. And it's just so fulfilling to watch these kids come into the program when they're in 11th grade, and we put them through the whole curriculum, and they come out of it and they're out on stage getting a company pitch. It's amazing. And I always say the more you give, the more you get. You get that satisfaction. You get the thrill of watching impact happen. And so I love doing it. Always happy to help other entrepreneurs that are starting out. Always happy to get guidance, give guidance. I think that's how you continue to be a good member of a community.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if I'm a emerging entrepreneur and I'm listening to this podcast, I'm in early 20s, 30s, what would, in all the different things happening, whether it's AI, political things happening, different things in the context of, world economy, what are two things that you would advise, right? As some fundamentals to be an entrepreneur, especially on the emerging entrepreneurs who are trying to kind of get in, have their own company.
Yeah, I would say eternal optimism. If you can't believe that against all odds, this is just going to happen, it's going to work out, it's going to be hard for you to convince other people. And sometimes it can border on foolish optimism, but I'd much rather entrepreneurs do that and wake up every morning thinking, yep, it's going to happen. We'll make it happen. It's going to work. And there's a lot of joy in that fearlessness. And I found that the phase in which you're building a new company or starting a new company is probably the most exciting phase, because there's so much going on and you have to thrive in chaos, right? You have to thrive in chaos. You have to thrive in uncertainty. You have to thrive in knowing, well, how am I going to make payroll? Yeah. They should excite. Like, I don't want to, like, it is important to have that in your DNA, like just to be eternally optimistic that you figure things out.
Yeah. Eternal optimism, things are going to go down, but still continue to be optimistic.
Yeah.
And be the driver. So to that point, right? So coming to the lifestyle, component of it, right? So entrepreneurship is hard, right? Even though whether you inherit it, etc., to keep the business going, scale it, it's incredibly hard. And also to build the team, right? That you built and continuing to build. How do you make other leaders? So a couple of examples from your kind of journey would be super helpful, right? So one of the things, myself being an entrepreneur, totally relate with you, right? So payroll, things like, you're just being optimistic and, driving forward. But at the same time, you have leaders that you are actually bringing and taking them along with you. Just a couple of examples from you, like, in your experience, how do you make that happen? And how do you kind of find those leaders who also share your hunger
Yeah.
and optimism?
I think, one of the things that I learned early on was team building, to the point of team building, is hire slow, fire fast. And it took me a while, because the sense of optimism applies to people and team selection also. So whenever you meet someone, oh, this is great, he's a great guy, or great gal, we should bring her on and let's do this. And with a little bit of experience, I've learned that, you have to temper that a little bit with a little bit more diligence and due process. I would say to entrepreneurs, when you're looking to bring team members, remember that you're not in the behavior changing business. You're in the behavior selection business, right? So what kind of traits are you looking for? Now, AI is a great example, right? Not a lot of people know about AI and how to use it and what the applications could be. It's new, it's emerging, and it's growing rapidly. So you're not going to find experts, deep experts, right? Maybe in Silicon Valley you would, maybe in some other geographies, but like in your immediate network, we're not going to find these people. But we will find the characteristics of certain people that are curious, that have the energy, that will learn. And your process has to be, as you're building a team, the ability to select behavior. You can't really change behavior. And at least we're not in the business. As entrepreneurs, we're not in the business of behavior changing. We leave that to therapists. our job is to bring the best people, the right culture, the right attitude.
That's awesome. Hire,
Hire slow.
hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the lifestyle issue, which you had earlier mentioned, which is, there's a lot of stress, right? Entrepreneurship, leadership comes inherently with stress. And this is again a quote that I can't take credit for, but stress is the absence of doing something. Like the work itself, it is not stressful. But when you don't do it, the not doing it is what causes the stress. And so I always found that I find myself, oh, I'm stressing out because I've got these emails to reply and I haven't done or make a decision. You have to make a decision. And when you don't make that decision, as long as you don't make that decision, you're stressed. The minute you make that decision, you execute it, the stress just goes away. So that to me is, mental health is a serious issue in entrepreneurship, right? How do you manage stress? How do you take care of yourself? And there's a lot to be said about entrepreneurs that go through that journey, that have to put in some time and effort for themselves and find areas and avenues which are stress releasing and helpful for their mental health.
Yeah. So I knew you personally, from a lifestyle perspective, from a stress relief perspective. You do play cricket. Yeah, you're so fun to hang out with. I've seen you fiercely hitting the ball, and sometimes you did hit. Some of our friends who play cricket with us will disagree. Well, not really. Actually, I remember like you hitting a four. I was the festival at the festival. It was edges. Yeah, it was a huge game for me. Yeah, yeah. There you go. Yeah. So I know you bring that, and you switch off, and you're so engaged in the sport. I know you personally. So, but outside that, like, what else? How do you in a typical day in the life? Right. So I go through it. I'm sure like, viewers, go through this a lot too. What's in the day in the life? Small things that we do that really, you told something really cool and actionable. It's just taking action. Yeah. Is the first thing to avoid stress. Outside of that, what do you do?
So first of all, I personally, I enjoy what I do. And look, we are private equity backed, and my friends on the private equity side will not mind me saying it, that it is stressful. Yeah, it's a very high pressure job. It's a very high pressure situation. And when you are accountable to a board and to investors, it is stressful. But you have to find joy in it, right? You have to, it's like going to the gym. You go to the gym, yeah, it's going to hurt, but there is a sweet pain of doing that, right? You feel like, okay, the stress is not bad for the body. Stress is not bad for the body. I understand that too much of it can be difficult, but how do you manage? So one, enjoy what you do because then it's less stressful. Two, obviously find things that give you decompression, right? Cricket's great. I play a lot of golf, of course, weather permitting. And then I find the most sort of happiness with spending time with my daughter, hanging out with friends. These are things that are helpful. I read this really cool thing about, hard dopamine and easy dopamine, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have a drink, it's easy dopamine, right? Your brain reacts, or you eat a slice of cake. It's easy dopamine, right? There's hard dopamine, which is doing the things that require effort, like going to the gym, like spending time with loved ones. Like it requires effort. But the effect of that is longer lasting. And obviously, it's a little bit more tenable than drinking it.
Then drinking it. Yeah. So it's interesting that you mentioned dopamine, right? So as part of flow wise leadership, that's the core of it. We start with making sure to kind of make sure it's not exactly to your point, the habit of getting to easy dopamine, right? And I'm focusing on the hard dopamine. So glad you mentioned that, right? So with the dopamine, there's lots of things dopamine happens on the business context as well. Yeah. So so you got content, you have like small wins, big wins, etc. Right. So how, as a leader, of a big organization, how do you keep folks? You got to celebrate the small wins, yep, right? But you're also keeping the big hard dopamine in mind, all right? So how do you kind of keep that going in, each not only for yourself, but also for the entire organization, with the board, the investors? Give us a couple of examples.
So with the organization, with the team, right? You have to celebrate the wins, but you have to cheer the effort, right? I know we live in a culture where it's sort of like, oh, A for effort, like you have to still win. But in a team dynamic, it's helpful to acknowledge people that go above and beyond, because that is, the dopamine that they need. Like, you have to encourage good behavior. You have to encourage people that go above and beyond, that are doing the hard work. And when in difficult conversations, so let's say you have had one or two rough quarters, right? And you're going up to your investors, and you're going to have to cut a sorry figure with regards to how the business is performing. And, I've been in those situations, and I think they expect both investors, board, your boss, as well as your team, expects you to define and tell what the problem is and always be brutally honest about how bad it is, but don't show up without a plan. Like, don't show up with, okay, what are we going to do about it? Right. So, you go into a doctor's office and they tell you you have bad news, but here's how we're going to deal with it. Right. There's a plan. Here's your care plan. This is how we're going to deal with it. I think entrepreneurs should not mistake that eternal optimism for obfuscating the facts. And I always encourage entrepreneurs and leaders to, give the bad news first, whether it is to your team, whether it's to your board. Do not shy away from giving the blunt, brutal truth, because only then can everyone come together and solve it.
That's awesome. So, kind of around that same point, but there's a culture of accountability, honesty, like candidness all the way across. How do you build a culture of accountability and ownership, right? So, because there's ownership involved in here. So, when you're brutally honest about something logical, you're kind of trying to get the ball moving forward. How did you build Unilog's, accountability and ownership structure?
Well, it starts with yourself. Are you accountable to your own failings, success? Like, are you accountable to the process? Are you taking responsibility for everything that you do? Or are you just passing blame around? Right? Well, I inherited this problem, and such happened 2 years ago. And so, uh, again, going back to, are you in the behavior changing business or in the behavior selection business? When we have a system at Unilog, we call it right person, right seat, as part of the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS. So we're always looking to make sure that every individual, we have a criteria of our six core values, right? Do they display and do they live our core values? Right? It could be curiosity, it could be conscience, it could be courage, it could be commitment, it could be courtesy. These are the core values that we live by. Are they displaying that? Right? Which means, are they curious about things? Have I noticed them learn something new? Are they displaying commitment, working a little late on a Friday night, taking a customer call over the weekend? Are they showing some commitment? Not every weekend, but sometimes, right? And then the other three things in that evaluation are, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity? Right? So when you look at people in their roles, sometimes good people can be in the wrong role, right? Meaning they want it. They want the role, they want the title. They kind of get it, like what's needed in the role, but they don't have the capacity. Or conversely, bright people, they have the capacity to do anything, right? They get it. They understand exactly what needs to be done, but don't really want it, right? So when we're looking at team and team dynamics and people, that's a great exercise to build culture, to say, is everyone in the organization, in my team, living, because the core values are a verb, are they living it? And then, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity for the role that they're in? And that can help entrepreneurs and leaders make the right decisions in terms of moving things around.
I'm with you, sir. That's awesome. So I'm going to take this, pivot to a global level, right? So, I mean, this applies to global level as well. I know, as I understand it, Unilog, obviously you are, a business is based in the US, but you also have a significant presence in, in India. You have a Baj team there. Yeah. I think of you as much more of a global leader, right? So how do you navigate like the cultural differences? Obviously you are uniquely positioned in a way that you actually grew up in India. You also, are here culturally well ingrained, but you're also building your team, right, to kind of like navigate this cultural differences. So you have a couple of examples. How do you deal with it? And then what are the things that, a global entrepreneur or emerging global entrepreneur, could do to really kind of handle that situation?
Yeah. So my philosophy and theory is in a company, within a brand, regardless of how many geographies you're in, there should be no cultural differences because the culture is set by the organization. So it is my hope that if you meet someone from Unilog in North America and you meet someone from Unilog in Mysore, India, you're going to find the culturally the same people, right? We're trying very hard to make sure that our culture carries between borders and that it's the same behaviors that we're identifying, bringing into our team. So my theory is that there should be no cultural differences within geographically separate or parts of the organization. I think there are differences in terms of work ethic, in terms of approaches to things, which is what I think you're trying to
Yeah,
get.
that's what I'm trying to get.
So it's very common in India, right? From the central government down to private businesses. You and I know this. Nothing starts at 8 a.m.
Right.
Right? India is a work-wise, they start a little later. And that would also apply to maybe if you had a European business, they're used to 4 weeks of vacation time and summer is different. And Indian staff will work late into the night. Right.
Right. I remember those days.
Right. Yeah. And so there are slight differences in terms of approach, but at the core, the person and the culture, company culture should remain the same. So whether they come into the office at 9 or 10 and stay till 7 or 8, or I have a lot of team members here that start super early, especially my team that's on the West Coast, you know, they're on calls at 4:30, 5:30 in the morning. And I admire that, but then also they're off much earlier in the day, right? So I think those are the things that you need to navigate through, right? And then approaches to certain things, which is, problem solving. I find, here's my theory that especially when the India, US, is, and I don't know if you notice this, but if you see Indian script, it's all circular, right? And time in India is eternal, flexible, right? Time in India is culturally and from our philosophy, it is you're born, you die, you go to heaven or hell for 7 days, and then you're reborn. And the cycle continues to repeat because of which time is eternal, right? Time management is a very Anglo-Saxon sort of construct, right? Because in the Western philosophy, you're born, you die, and it's hell or heaven for eternity, right? So you have finite time, and so when it comes to problem solving, we there might be some differences in terms of okay, I've solved this problem, but I'm gonna sleep on it, think about it again tomorrow. I have time. So there are things that you have to work through understanding the culture of and the ethos of the people. But I really hope that at a company level, we want to find the same people, the same core values, and the same culture.
Shoots its eternal time theories. Gonna go viral. No, that's actually I exactly know what you mean, right? So in terms of the spiritual
Right.
kind of culture around the area, it's just so different. It's so different. Uh, that was super useful.
Right.
So with all these things going on, you've got a global team, right? West Coast here, all the way South Asia, and you're involved in all these different work in the community. Obviously, you're driven, eternal optimist. How do you maintain focus and
Yeah.
clarity? Like some things, like day in the life, right? So obviously, there's week, month, quarter, you name it, right? But at the same time, all these things going on, how do you, if someone is aspiring to be you, right? Somebody is listening, aspiring to be you, what are the things 15 years ago you would have done differently, one or two things small to make sure you are focused, etc.
So this one is personal to me because and I'll be a little vulnerable here because you know there are different types of leaders. You have to be authentic. You have to know who you are and what your personality is. You have leaders and storied stalwarts of industry that have a very disciplined, very focused, very process driven approach to leadership and team building, and then you have the creatives and the more sort of reactive leadership style. So everyone has their own style. I have had to sort of do a fair bit of work to understand who I am and make sure that my leadership is authentic to me. And in that, and where I'm going with this is in that focus is a challenging area for me because I believe that I'm very good at multitasking. I have a little bit of sort of almost ADD, and it feels sometimes in some situations like a superpower. Because you can recognize patterns, you can do multiple things. You think, when you see a problem, you think of it sort of out of the box. You're a little bit more creative. And the way I've figured out the best way to compensate for that is to bring on people that are not like you, right? I am blessed to have an executive team. Our chief operating officer, Ace Rosenstein, also a Chestnut Hill resident, our CTO in India, Krish, our CFO, Prabhakar. The team doesn't have, they had different strengths, right? And different, so my weaknesses are compensated by what Ace brings to the table, what Krish brings to the table, what Prabha. So when you start thinking about larger organizations, I've learned that I understand that I have certain strengths, that problems and challenges, I approach it differently. I have a different thought process, and that's great. But dogged focus and getting the execution piece done, and there's better people than me. And so rounding out your yourself with the right people, with the right strengths is imperative. And in a startup, that may not be the case. The startup just takes on your own DNA. But as you start scaling, I think it's important to make sure that you bring the right people, especially at the executive team, that can compensate for some of the things that others may not have.
Yeah. So basically, authentic leadership, complement are the things that you need
Correct.
to complete the full picture
Absolutely.
with the right people, behavior choosing,
Correct.
right? Like choosing those behaviors that you want
Correct.
to make it a full circle.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So such that you started as a CEO of Unilog, almost 20 years ago, right? So at that time, there are not many Indian American CEOs. Now there are more and more Indian American CEOs and there was in the last podcast that I had with MR, we talked about the diaspora's impact in the global community and also, in the US. But there are some unique challenges. I'm sure there were unique challenges when you started, and you're probably still going through it in a different context. What were the challenges?
Yeah.
And how did you overcome?
I wouldn't say, a huge challenge, but I do think like you get slotted into being tech, right? Which is amazing, which has changed, right?
Yeah.
Over the last 50 years, it has changed dramatically. Um, and so you always are assumed to be on the tech side of things, developing products or building products. And, I haven't written a line of code since I was 16. I'm not on the tech side of things. My passion is on the go-to-market, product strategy, marketing, sales, building relationships, building, strategic partnerships. So that's been my passion. But it can be a little bit, oh, you must be on the tech side. Is there someone on the commercial side? Well, no, I'm on the commercial side. And
Your task can do. Wha-
So that, but I wouldn't call that a challenge. And look, our community, in the Indian American community, is blessed because we have a lot of positive stereotypes. We also have some unbelievable role models, right? And it doesn't matter what your political ideology is. The fact that the first female vice president of this country was Indian American origin. Um, the top tech companies are being led by Indian American origin CEOs. Some of them, that got here not too long ago. It is an amazing story, but those role models exist outside of tech or outside of politics. The role models are still the Punjabi uncle that came here in the 60s and started a chain of gas stations. Started with one and built an empire of 50, 60 gas stations, 100 hotels. I mean, 70%, I'm sure it's in the report, 70% of hotel rooms in America are owned by Indian Americans. It's mind-boggling. It's unbelievable, right? So I think there are challenges. There's also benefits. They just assume you're smart, and that may not be the case. I'm certainly not smart in all things, but there's a lot of benefits to, and we, again, our generation and our kids are gonna stand on the shoulders of the enormous amount of work that has been done by the generations before us.
Yeah. So thank you for coming to the podcast. You've been an inspiration, uh, not only from a leadership perspective, many things that I heard in this podcast, you never talk about it, but it was incredible to hear the wisdom, and you were kind enough to share that wisdom to everybody. I know you do that work in the community here and also back in India and several places across the globe. And thanks for being you, and thank you for coming on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
That was a great pleasure. Thank you.
thank you.